Today we are driving the all-new generation of the Audi A6, the A6 C9, and going to solve the questions: how big is the difference to the all-new Audi A5? How does this one here relate to the main competitors like Mercedes E-Class and BMW 5 Series? And especially when it's packed here, full of technology features, and with the V6, what driving experience does it deliver? A special focus on the driving experience here today with Thomas Nautical in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go with the all-new Audi A6 with a kind of like frameless grille here in the front, at least here in the upper part. Blacked out Audi rings, this is an option. You don't have to go for this one. You can also have it in the brighter scheme. This is also the S-line, so there you have these lying L forms in the front grille. The base front grille would actually have a more open honeycomb design, so that's usually designed that it's the sportier version. But here it's kind of the other way around. I mean, that's a matter of preference, definitely. The headlamps here, optional matrix LED, you can also see it right here. And it kind of has this honeycomb grid in front of that. It's interesting in the daytime running light scheme. The main headlamp unit then below. But I think it's good that they have one unit here, because this split headlamp design, where you split daytime running light and the main headlamp unit, we've seen it recently with a lot of vehicles. And no one is really satisfied with that. So I think here it's actually more beautiful to have one unit as for that. Then this one here under the hood, the V6, soon more to the engines. And this is here Madeira brown. It looks black. When you look really closer, it's dark brownish, and Madeira means wood in Portuguese. We're also in Portugal here for you today. So best greetings to our Portuguese fans as well. And the thing is, yeah, it looks more like burnt wood, maybe, something like that. Wheels from 18 to 21 inch wheels. So here, 21 inch, these are the biggest ones, also with the contrasting red brake caliper. And being, these are not the ones that you can return. I was expecting that. Then here the black wheels, that in this case we also have everything blacked out basically. You have the S-Line badge here, yeah, the return of the badges. So we gave the feedback from you back to Audi, of course, and now they're putting more badges about S-Line and also true S models on again. Soon also more about the true S model here for the all-new Audi A6. When we have news there, we'll keep you updated on our channel. Then the Avant building type here, there will also be a sedan. Soon on our channel as well. The Avant, of course, especially popular in Europe, and a really like stretched look for that one, almost like a shooting brake, so to speak. Really strong hip area. The total length is 4.99 meters or 197 inches. That's 6 centimeters or 2 inches longer than before. And the length difference to the Audi A5 in the new generation, which is available as Avant or sedan, they merged that naming. That difference is some 16 centimeters or 7 inches, so not too much. And especially the wheelbase difference between A6 and A5 is actually just 4 centimeters or like 1.5, 2 inches. That's a crucial thing we're going to talk about, because if you listen to that, like the size difference, you might think, why do I even need an Audi A6? Yeah, but in the driving part, which will be the focus here today, we will go in detail on these differences. For example, you have soft close for the doors here for the A6. You have air suspension as an option, also equipped with this vehicle. You have rear axle steering, also equipped with that vehicle here. Steers in the opposite direction up to 5 degrees, up to a threshold of 60 kilometers or 37 miles per hour. Reduces the turning circle by a meter. And this one also can get, even as a non-S model, the Quattro Sports differential at the rear. Then for a torque vectoring, so there can be a difference of 19% torque between left and right wheel, so that the curved outer wheel gets more torque when accelerating out of the corner. Very interesting. Soon also more about the Quattro technology when we get to the engine and so on. Rear here with a modern signature. These are the OLEDs, organic LED as well, and there you can see this proximity sensor when you're getting too close. Think about this vehicle that a lot what you see in here is optional, especially with this vehicle. This is a top spec vehicle here, because they want to show off like what can they do in the new generation. And they cannot do fake exhaust anymore. So the automotive fake exhaust police is out of business at Audi, because these are real exhaust tips. They're like dissolving from the real one here for the 6-cylinder engine, 3-liter TFSI. Quattro badge here, although there is no classic 4060 Quattro anymore. that one is basically gone with basically all the new models. They now either use a Quattro Ultra, would even be standard here for the 6-cylinder. And Quattro Ultra means that the rear axle can be uncoupled. And at the same time, the Quattro Ultra in the new generation also enables you up to 70% of the power to the rear. It's a kind of like a strange thing. So it can be rear wheel biased when you accelerate hard out of the corner, but when you're more stationary, more rolling, like on the motorway, and you don't give more throttle, then it's becoming a front wheel drive model. That's the thing. And it's working actually quite well, supposed to do that for efficiency gains. But of course, the classic Quattro system will have, let's say, more moments where it's like the distribution is more rear wheel biased in a way. That's at least what I experience. Although Audi says it's still rear wheel biased when you really push it. That's the thing, you know. So it's more flexible than before. Let's take it that way. And the thing is, however, when you go for the sports differential, which is an option here, for example, for the 3-liter TFSI V6, the Quattro sports differential basically makes it not an Ultra anymore, because then the rear axle is always coupled, so it doesn't uncouple, and it has the torque distribution. So this is the logic of the new Quattro system. So either Quattro Ultra or Quattro with sports differential, and that counts for this one here. It's the only model that can be bought with a sports differential so far. It will be the same for the S model for sure. This one here makes 367 horsepower, will be the main engine for the Northern American market so far. Let's see if like the 2-liter will be offered later on. So 4.7 seconds in the acceleration figure. And then as a lower entry-level versions are the 2-liter TFSI. Front wheel drive is like a really entry-level version, or the TDI, the 2-liter TDI. That one also gets the mild hybrid plus. In Europe, you also get that here for the V6. So there's a buffer battery where you can have some recuperation, some electric moments. And later to come also the plug-in hybrids. And we also have more details about the individual engines in our data spec than in the video description, and also in the separated comment. Nice sound deadening here also under the hood. And overall, Audi claims they have, whoa, that's a lot of gas pressure there in these ones. So Audi says they have reduced the noise volume on the interior by 30%. There are even tires with inside foam and so on. And what you maybe also noticed here, just from the building form here, aerodynamics is a thing. So the Avant at 0.25 in the CD value, so it's more aerodynamic than before. That should be giving some efficiency gains. And important, suspension, base suspension or fixed sport suspension, minus 20 millimeters, or equipped with this, the adaptive air suspension that gives you also, like, say, like the biggest advantage in comparison to the A5. Very interesting to see, by the way. Look at that. The brake light is here vertical, and then the turning indicator here in the highest trim with a cascading function. Proximity light, see there, and then this is the reverse light. See here in this integrated light strip. Yeah, so very interesting to see all of these functions. Can we have the reverse here? Yeah, there we go. One more time. There you see 2 reverse lights integrated there. So interesting light ideas, isn't it? Now to the interior. Key fob looks like this. Actually does the job, it's nice. Then you grab underneath here, and then there's no physical feedback for the handles. Door closing sound is nice in the front. See on the rear. It's also nice. So very solid door closing sound. Let's take a look at the yes, of course, yeah. And here we also, it's an option, of course. It's also a difference what you cannot get in the A5. Here you have a magic soft close. Then inside of the doors, have some stitching here. This also, let's say, a little bit softened up. Then we have these insert here. This is like a little softer leatherette for your elbow. Car is complaining about the key that's not in place. Here also these automatic window levers. You can also check it out here. We have a dual glazed window. There we go. Let's see if we also have it in the rear. And I would suspect that is also just an option. Then here, yeah, there we go. Also good for the insulation, of course. Yeah, this pad here did collect a lot of dust in here already, because in the air is a lot of dust here today somehow. But you can see this is the pad with the whole capacitive buttons and so on. yeah, I'm not a big fan of this, honestly, I have to say. But I found it very cool that here, like this three-dimensional structure, that's actually quite nice. And yeah, we know it also from Bentley. There has been introducing that. No covering at the inside of the doors pockets. Only the lower part is some rubber ground that things don't fly around that much, actually. And then S-line entry sill badge. And also like this S logo on the steering wheel, perforation on the side. And here, these are here the car says I want to have the key in the vehicle. Here we have these illuminated, and they also do somewhat clicking sounds, for example. Yeah, zoom more to the instruments and stuff. Right side heated steering wheel for the activation, but you have no real jog wheel anymore or something like that. And the audio rings are also two-dimensional instead of three-dimensional, which is also a step back, honestly. Then the seats you can get, at least in European markets, in some, not in all, get also fabric seats or microfiber seats. These seats here are a mix of animal leather and leatherette. So it depends on which area you're looking at. Not all options on all markets. So especially UK and US market will be restricted again. And that's really a yesterday approach. So BMW does it way better in offering a material that is more modern, more animal friendly. At the same time, gives more comfort and advantages to the customer. So Audi is a little bit lagging behind as for that. And the seats are not different from the A5, actually. I explicitly asked for that. And I think they should offer a little bit more comfort. They're not bad from the ergonomics, so on. But in this segment, I think we can expect a little bit more. Then here, 1.89 m, 6'2". The question is where you measure. Like with this glass roof, there's a lot of space. To the side, then here is a little bit less. But in the front, it definitely works for tall adults. And then electronic control of the steering wheel, up and down, in and out, like this. So it's nice. And the size of the steering wheel is actually pretty cool. It has a sporty atmosphere. And then you already start to see this cockpit here with the 12-inch instruments, 14.5 of the infotainment, and optional 11-inch passenger screen. But you maybe also realize this is basically the same that we see in the Audi A5, in the Q5, in the A6 e-tron. So they picked this one new cockpit and put it actually in all of the vehicles. And here we go. There you can see this passenger screen. It's an option. The thing is, if you don't have it, then it's all the way blacked out. And it's also combined with these tech packages, depending on how it is oriented in your market. This one here has the Tech Pro package, and then everything is almost included as for this, but it's also a very expensive option, actually. By the seating form, by the way, there is a base seat. This is a sport seat already with more shoulder situation. And then there's also an S sport seat that has like even more shoulder accentuation, and it's even possible to get the Bang & Olufsen sound system with speakers in the headrest. It's also here, and then you can hear, for example, the GPS voice guidance via these speakers, while the rest of the music is still playing in the front and so on. Middle console, yeah, a lot of high gloss black. I like the adaptive cup holders with a 4-dot design, integrated shifting lever. This is the S-tronic dual clutch transmission. And then in the front there's an inductive charging pad, which is also ventilated, 2 USB-C chargers, real volume jog at least for the volume. And then you have this curved unit, so to speak, and everything, of course, via touch. Only the drive select is here, button in below, and you can also click through the drive select. Then you don't have to confirm it in the screen, just keep clicking here. And the biggest drawback, I think, is about the temperature unit, because it's placed low, but then you have this long table here, so to speak. And then I always have a problem like finding a good hand position to really click these things. And I don't feel like a person who wants to talk to the car every time just for a 0.5 degree changing of the temperature. And also when you want to change the vent strength, you have to click once and then wait for the system to build up and then click again. So the speed should be better and it should be easier to control, especially the basic functions. And that was fine before. So we will, especially in driving, look at things that are better than in the previous generation. But as you see, there are also things that are worse than in the previous generation. What's pretty cool here, by the way, is that you have a digital garage door opener that can even be combined with GPS signal. So you just approach your garage, basement garage door, and it's already open because, you know, with the GPS signal, the car is coming. It's communicating with the garage door. You can easily clone that, and that is a very good function actually where no one is talking about. And I think it originates because it's also the same Porsche backend. Porsche has been introducing that with the lift function, like for the very sporty models, that the front, that you don't scrape it from underneath. And I think that evolved due to that. So a pretty cool function as for that. What's also good that we still have classic stalks here behind. Also here shifting pedals and so on. So you still have some mix of classic and let's say too modern user interface, because at some point it's not going forward, it's rather going backward. And I hope that the rear buttons also for the climate will at some point also make its return.
And armrest.
What?
The armrest.
Ah, yeah, the armrest here. It's soft enough for the elbow, could be a little bit softer, but it's fine. And can also be adjusted in height. Let's see this, like this. Yeah, here in different positions and more space underneath. No additional charging here, but I think we also have enough. So yeah, this is more like a clean space for all the clutter. And the key fob could be put here or not, depending what you like. Oh, and the glove box, of course. Yeah, that's very smooth. Oh, the sun case here was faking the, so it's not that smooth. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Interesting. So, but I mean, it's slow enough, so that's fine. And yeah, also when you close it, it sounds a little bit, you know, like better closing sounds, right? But I think it's nicely dampened when it folds down, definitely. And the driver POV, yeah, once again, I would wish the return of the three-dimensional Audi rings here, honestly. Then the digital instruments are somewhat adjustable. Here, when you click the view, for example, minimized or like this. And in the middle part, look at that. So this is at the moment additional speed visualization in the balanced mode. When we go into the dynamic mode, we have the return of the RPM meter in the middle. There we go, but only in the dynamic mode. And here, comfort mode, it's different again. Then the RPM is in the right lower. And when we are in the efficiency mode again, then we have the proper RPM meter visualization again. Interesting logic for that. And then you can also order this head-up display, which is not flickering in real life. You can have also some visualizations changes here. And the main infotainment system looks like this, like the basic overview. All the car functions are also here, like display, or you can change the light signatures for exterior and for interior lighting here, also for the ambient lighting, for example. Here always back to the main menu, and then let's check out the Apple CarPlay integration. It looks like this, and Android Auto also available, and it's both wired or wireless on demand. And by the way, here on the favorite button, you can actually assign a shortcut for this speed beeping stuff, you know, when you exceed by 1 km/h, then you can also deactivate it easily at the steering wheel. Testing here the Bang & Olufsen sound system. Good 3D sound indeed, so that's nice. Yeah. So we like it, and it's very clear, you know, very clear. So if you need something very clear music, also to differentiate the individual layers of the music, individual instruments, that's also a way to go. Rear seats, first of all, inside of the doors, you also have this stitching here at least. It's also somewhat soft. And then you have this cover here. Oh, there we go. Proper sunshade, that's nice. Then we also have these leatherette surfaces on the inside, the nice three-dimensional surface here that is also used in the Bentley Continental and also in the Q5 as well, and the A5 as well. And then here inside of the doors in the lower part, this is just the hard plastic stuff. Bang & Olufsen sound system, even more speakers here in the rear. And then we see there's a top tether at the co-driver seat, the passenger seat. It's also ISOFIX in the front and ISOFIX in the rear. And you can click that open here, like this. Is a nice solution, actually. And then in the middle part, you can fold this one down. Nice adaptive cup holders. This is good quality. And also here, the thing that you fold down, when you push it down, that's good quality. So I like it. And here, when you pull this one, then you can also open just a ski hatch like that. Then in the lower part, this is a reminiscence of the previous generation, because this same climate unit is with touch, yes, but it's quite complex, I would say, and also has like this nice clicking sound, although it is not a clicking stuff you do, you know what I mean? 2 USB-C chargers here as well. Also with good power, big middle console. And then the question is, how much space do we still have? Well, this one is here, the one with the panoramic glass roof. So to the glass roof, it's actually good for the headroom you still have with 189, 602. Here to the side, and it gets a little bit closer. And when you sit usually like this, you know, you're closer to that area. So this is what you should measure. And then there's a hand over my head that works, so it still works for tall adults. And this one also being here the panoramic roof. And at the moment there is this shade in place, the electrochrome shade. And I think from the rear perspective you can very well see that here. When I open that one now, it opens bit by bit. I can also close it again. Can we see that well? Is it there? Yeah, okay. And you can also stop that in the middle if that would make any sense. Let's say in the front you want more light and the kids shall be a little bit darkened out in the rear, something, I don't know. It also does block the sun in a way that it doesn't get too hot in the interior cabin. However, it will still get hotter in comparison to the normal fixed roof if you go for this option in here. Then legroom, very important. You can still sit here as a tall adult, and the thing is that the difference between the A6 and the A5, told also in the static review, is this. This way I sit in the A5, and that way I sit in the A6. So it's like a hand in front of my knees is the length difference on the interior, and that makes total sense because the wheelbase difference is exactly 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches. Yeah, and then of course from the space and from the interior cockpit, you might indeed think, hey, isn't an A5 just enough for me? Yeah, you can really understand that, and maybe also when you see the trunk soon that it won't be like too big differences. But I can tell you in driving, it will be super interesting to also take a look at that comparison very soon. The trunk is at 500 liters, and if you have the mild hybrid, like most European models have, even only at 470 liters. And that is, liter figure-wise, significantly lower than with the predecessor. But is it still versatile? Soon again the sedan for you. Today the Avant, the Estate, or the Wagon, or the shooting brake. However you want to call it. Here is actually quite cool that this one here raises automatically and goes down again when you close the lid. It's still good in square dimensions, but you can see it has this, you know, falling roofline style, better aerodynamics and so on, cooler design, and that has the disadvantage that you do lose some liter figures. Here the trolley also fits in vertically underneath, under the covers, no problem. The width is about 1 meter or 40 inches. You see here just a little bit more. The height right here, it's about 27 inches or 66 centimeters, and the standard length is actually quite decent. You're here at 1 meters 20 or 48 inches. So that's already decent. You can see you can still well use it. This one here you can lift up. Then you have, for example, these splitters there underneath. You can, for example, use. You can also fold it like this and fold it up like this. Yeah. Might look different in the non-MHEV version, that you have more storage than underneath there. You can also take out that whole thing for cleaning reasons. It would be possible. And then, very important, also integrated light. That's nice. On both sides actually, and also on both sides here to fold it right and left. There we go. And they fold relatively flat indeed. Can maybe go a little bit better when you put the head restraint up. And then here almost the full ruler fits in here, and that's 2 meters or 78, 79 inches. So still well usable, even though we have lost some liters. Dynamic mode. That was 50 to 100 kilometers an hour with the V6 driving the all-new Audi A6. And you might have heard our lunch bags in the trunk flying towards the back of the trunk. Yeah, that's how powerful this is. 4.7 seconds would be the acceleration figure of this V6 3-liter engine. Very well known engine. Basically, here in the European version of the all-new A6, this one also gets the MHEV Plus system. So MHEV Plus. This is a mild hybrid system with a significant buffer battery already, and especially if you not go to the dynamic mode, but if you are in the efficiency mode, then you even experience more electric moments, so to speak, like when the car is coasting, for example, or when you are also like driving towards a traffic light and the engine is being shut off and so on. Let's see, does it here? Yeah. So here, for example, RPM go to 0. Yeah, and then when you go on the throttle again, like this transition where the engine goes on and off is different from a normal start-stop system where it's more about being stationary at the traffic light and so on. Here these transitions are way smoother, how the engine starts again and so on. And the Northern American market models, where you only get the sedan, these ones will only have the start-stop system actually, and not here the MF Plus. Yeah, and I mean, good acceleration. And the first thing that comes to your mind is the air suspension. And it's an option here for the all-new Audi A6. Maybe we can also drive the non-air suspension model later to compare. But this is also here a major difference if you compare, for example, an Audi A5. Because here in the A6, you can get that air suspension. And for example here, dynamic mode, we have a little bit stiffer than when we're going into some nice corners here. Of course, you feel the weight of the vehicle. There, maybe in A5 is a little bit more dynamic, but the length difference is not that large anymore. But in a dynamic mode, a little more response, suspension is stiffer. And Audi promises that the span between comfort and sportiness is even wider now with this suspension. So it means softer in the softer setting and stiffer in the stiffest setting. And so far, it's working very well. Here in the dynamic mode, the car is not that like boat-alike, has this just stiffer approach, and it's actually fun to steer it around. Also, the steering is even more progressive, so the steering input, how direct the car feels, has been increased, and that feels really nice. I mean, it is somewhat a large vehicle, yes, already, and still, it's really fun to drive, pretty cool, and it is extremely smooth. Of course, we have to talk about the Quattro all-wheel drive system as well, because there's also so much to talk about that. Yeah, you don't have the classic Quattro anymore, like the 40-60 standard, and it was also varying a little bit, but more to the rear actually. Here now, you start with the Quattro Ultra, which has also the capability to send 70% of the power to the rear wheels, so that is possible. But it will be more in situations where you really hammer the throttle. If you're more rolling, for example, and slower speeds, it will somewhat have a stronger front wheel bias than the SOFA system. However, we already been testing that in the all-new A5, for example. When you really accelerate out of these corners, you don't feel the front wheel bias, so that system is working quite well, gotta say that. And here now, something special, you have the sports differential. That is together in this package again. Tech Pro package is combined with that. Rear axle steering is also combined with that. And then you also have the torque vectoring, that when you are in the corner accelerating out, you have more power on the curved outer wheel. And that goes up to like a 19% difference between left and right. Pretty interesting as for that. And we'll also try to experience more situations of that very soon. So you really start driving and think about, wow, there's actually so much technology to talk about with this vehicle. But the coolest thing I feel actually is when you actually just enjoy the car. And as I said, when you are in the stiffer modes and dynamic mode, you can still drive the car in a comfortable way, but it really feels sportier. So there's a notable difference here in the driving mode. And let's see also when we go back to the most comfortable mode, the comfort mode. There we go. Now we have it a little bit softer, and you immediately feel it's not that the car would be not sporty then, but it's somehow more floaty. And that is something that Leah and I have been talking about that initially. Like you immediately feel that. But I think we can go one more acceleration here before we talk about the comfort. So we are in a dynamic mode once again. And we can go like 70 to 120. Plop, that's it. Yeah, really good and smooth. Sound, I mean, it's not that much. I mean, there are these very silent new emission laws. And if we think about our S5 convertible at home, that one sounds way different, but it was also the pre-facelift before the the particle filters were introduced for the petrol engines. Yeah, so honestly, for the sound, it's not worth it. Not for the sound. There it doesn't make much difference. at least from here, from the inside, even if we are in that dynamic mode. But of course the performance is always better, you know, so it goes really nice, smooth and everything. Not sure how we can pick up that on camera, but like with the shifting process is not as smooth as I would have expected, you know. I mean, sometimes it feels a little bit undecided, or you feel it a little bit too much. So there I feel that the gearboxes that BMW, for example, is using also in the 5 Series is just more smoother, like this engine and gearbox combination. We also felt that difference when we were comparing Audi Q5 and BMW X3, which we will, according to your wish, soon also put into a double header, like a head-to-head comparison. Here now, quickly off the motorway a little bit, and soon going on the motorway again. We can go to this comfort mode. And this was really something I was, starting that earlier. I mean, also when the road is a little bit destroyed, you start driving and you think, what a relief. So, and that is really the main difference to me also to the Audi A5, that you can get this air suspension here. And no matter what is on the road, or if, especially when they're like waves, the car's really floating, you know, that's really, really, really cool. Together, that fits very well. They have worked on the NVH, noise, vibration, harshness, so the sound deadening. And they say, according to their measurements, it's 30% more silent or 30% less noise. And it's really very silent. So, I mean, even if we were on the motorway there at 120 kilometers an hour, like 70 miles an hour, I don't even notice a difference in the wind noise, rolling noise, and so on when we are here now at 50 kilometers an hour in inner city traffic. It is really extremely silent. So to me, that makes the impression that the Audi A6 in the new generation is heading a little bit to the Mercedes E-Class direction, you know, like soft air suspension, really good sound deadening, and so on. Not that the previous A6 was bad in that respect, but here, especially like in this suspension comfort, how the car's handling, and also how silent it is, like a step further. We talked about in the interior that there are also things that are maybe not better in this new generation, but maybe even worse. That is the user interface that was better in the previous generation, I feel, you know. And I'm still also not that happy with the seating comfort. As I said initially, I feel that also in the previous generation that you had a better seating comfort. So steps back in these directions, seats and user interface, steps forward in the noise deadening and the suspension and driving comfort. And this car can really do both. It gives you very nice comfort. At the same time, I feel it's really good also in dynamic driving. Here, the road is really destroyed and we don't really feel much from that, you know. And by the way, the driving setting, you can also click through here. So you can leave your hand here in the lower part, and then you don't have to like confirm in the screen. That's also good. And when you need a little bit more punch, like the RPM higher, a gear lower, then you can go to this dynamic mode once again and have some fun. Other than that, you can also, for example, leave it on the balanced mode. So each mode really has the distinct feeling, really balanced if you somehow want to mix out everything. Dynamic for sporty driving, stiffer suspension, comfort for the most floaty ride, and efficiency is when you want to enjoy these MHEV Plus advantages the most and really keen on efficient driving and so on. However, if we have here the V6 with the Quattro Sports differential, this will be less efficient than the pure Quattro Ultra version, because once again the difference is the base Quattro Ultra, which is also the standard setting here for the V6, can uncouple the rear axle for efficiency reasons, especially when you're like rolling or not giving much throttle and so on. But then as soon as you have the sports differential like we have equipped with this vehicle here, the rear axle is always being attached. That of course reduces efficiency, yet at the same time it increases driving fun and agility. And this is then here really the full package. And if it wasn't for enough technology, there is even the rear axis steering with this vehicle. I said they often combine these high technology packages with each other, that as soon as you click one thing in the configurator, you're forced to pick the other one and vice versa. The only thing you can pick individually, off or on, is the air suspension. Everything else from these high-tech things are usually combined here. We have also the rear axis steering here. I haven't really talked about that in detail, and it is set up in a way that up to a threshold of 60 kilometers an hour or 37 miles per hour, it steers in the opposite direction than the front wheels, and above that, in the parallel direction. Below, it reduces turning circle, and for example here when we're also in a tighter corner, so when I'm driving here now 50, as the sign also says, then I feel that the rears, the rear wheels, they are turning in the opposite direction up to 5 degrees. At the moment it's not really 5 degrees, it also depends on the steering angle and so on, but it makes the car more agile. At the same time, they have found a setup where it does not feel unnatural. Sometimes when you drive vehicles with rear axis steering, they almost feel fishtaily a little bit. So they perform very well in the reduction of turning circle, which is here -1 meter with attack. But at the same time, they make the car a little bit unnatural. But here I think they found a good setup where the car still feels natural. So if you would take a seat here in this vehicle and you don't know it has a rear axis steering, you would maybe notice the more narrow turning circle, but you would not say, oh, this feels so unnatural because it has a rear axle steering. So some might not notice at first when they when they don't know, and that's actually a good sign. More acceleration, guys. 70 to 120 once again. There we go. Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's really nice. Like that smooth acceleration. Then we can go back to the comfort mode, that Leah can also relax a little bit more. But how does it feel for you? Like, because this is like all the tech, like the rear axis steering, the air suspension, different modes and everything. Do you still feel comfortable, or do you feel like, it's a big car, it's a lot of weight, and it's like
it's comfortable.
it's
Yeah,
okay?
it's good.
Also
Yeah.
in agile driving?
Yeah.
That's always the greatest
Yeah.
greatest sign, actually, because sometimes we have vehicles that when I really push it, then Leah's like, but here when she's fine, then it's of course a very good sign for that. Yeah, and I think she told that to me initially. I think the air suspension is your favorite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she really likes like the comfort and the floaty ride and so on. That's for the passenger also a really nice thing. And we can enjoy that even more here. For example, 120 kilometers an hour, we go to that one now once again. And when then there's some bumps on the road or even some waves, then the air suspension is evening that out very well. At the same time, it's not that loose and that wobbly that the car would be unbalanced or something. And another thing comes to play now with the rear axis steering, because as I said, at lower speeds it steers in the opposite direction. At higher speeds now, so more than 60 kilometers an hour, it steers in the parallel direction, up to 2 degrees. But that case would rather be when you maybe in icy conditions, that it gives more stability. Other than that, it maybe point something degrees. But still, it does have an effect, even at the higher speeds. And then steering in the parallel direction, you can think about if you would not have that. And for example, I do now like a quick lane change, like this. In an exaggerated way, the rear would brake out. It doesn't, of course, because we have enough traction here. But when you then have the rear wheels steering in the parallel direction, like you think now here, then it gives the car more stability, because the rear is also reacting less in a way, because it also has this guidance from the rear axle steering, even if it's then in the opposite direction. That's an awesome light, I'm just looking at the camera. It's this looks like a nice studio. Now it's a little bit darker, but the first part of the tunnel looked really cool on camera, actually. Yeah, but very interesting. You can also see the ambient lighting here, red in the dynamic mode, like this river hoop here in the front and all the way around. It's also pretty nice. This smoothness on the motorway is pretty cool. We're in Portugal here today, so we cannot drive 200 kilometers an hour, 125 miles an hour like we do in Germany. We can do that at a later stage then. But here is a very good motorway vehicle. We can also.
Greetings. We are in Porto.
Portugal. Yeah. So I know we have a lot of fans from Portugal as well, and best greetings to you all. So always love to be here. We will also combine this year after that when we go to another event and be in Lisbon. I think the episodes will air in the opposite order, actually, but always try to spent a lot of time here. Really very nice country with a lot of great landscape and everything, nice people. So back to the car. I think we lose some more money here with this motorway beeping system. That's the cool thing about Germany, that the motorways are free. I mean, but this might change soon. Let's see about that. On my acceleration here. There we go, 60 to 120. Yeah, really nice from this V6 power. That's also the reason you would go for this very engine here and not for one of the entry-level engines. And now, when we go back to the comfort setting, and we also set the cruise control. There we go, separate column here in the lower left part. Also the active lane keeping assist is activated, and let's see how smooth is it. Here, not too many overcorrections or something. Audi usually does that very well in the latest iterations here. Yeah, smooth, sophisticated. There, now let's see. Yeah, see, that was enough that the car still. Okay, Thomas is still here. You know, we recently had it in the Skoda Enyaq where the systems are being ridiculed by that you have to hold on so tight to the steering wheel that you could steer yourself anyway. You know, so and here it makes sense. The car still wants you for mandatory and for legal reasons, wants you to hold on to the steering wheel, yes, but it leaves you enough room and you can just barely touch it, and that's it actually. We also have the blind spot monitor here, but there's no one overtaking us at this moment because we are obviously quick enough, so can't show you that. But it's like here in this side mirror, it's also very nice integration as for that. And yeah, so let's activate it one more time. See here, also in this corner, lane is being kept pretty nicely, so that's cool. Yeah, so also sophisticated as for the driving assistance systems. When you compare, however, like BMW 5 Series or Mercedes E-Class, they already have some more tech in there. You know, like in the 5 Series, there's now in a couple of countries available that you can do this automatic lane change by looking at the mirror, for example. It's not possible here. So, but I mean, the basic functions are all covered and they're doing it very well. You can also increase the speed a little bit just by pulling this separate lever. It's also good that we still have control over everything. And I can, of course, use the shifting pedals here at the steering wheel if I want to shift down myself. And behind us is someone very angry, obviously, with this 20-year-old Citroën Sara, I think. Let's see. There we go. Interesting vehicle, definitely. Yeah, going for some F1 racing here on Portuguese motorways. Let's see about the brakes. So here from 120 to 100, good feeling for the brakes. It's nice, you can very well dose that actually. And also the throttle input is in a way that you know what you're doing. You know, sometimes you have some pedals and some vehicles where they're a little bit off. It's not the case here. And the steering, as I also said initially, very progressive. You can keep your hands at the steering wheel all the time. You don't have like over grab even in tighter corners. And it's really precise. So you exactly know what you're doing at any time with that steering. And that's actually a pretty cool thing. So yeah, I mean, and initially when looking at the car from the exterior, you think, okay, it looks beautiful, definitely, but why would I need an Audi A6 and not an Audi A5 when the length difference is so minor? Yeah, mainly for possible soft closed doors, possible air suspension, possible rear axle steering. Okay, that's about it actually. But then when you start driving it, there is a notable difference between an A5 and an A6. And the more you drive it and the more situations you are in, I would really say, if money doesn't play a role, and the A5 is not cheap at all, you know, especially in this comfort aspect. Now, yeah, of course, the noise deadening. This is also, you know, more silent than an Audi A5 in the new generation. So there you see, when you drive the vehicle, why the Audi A6 in that model lineup still makes sense. Yeah, if it maybe in some aspects even keeps up to the Audi A8, not in all aspects, of course, but like how silent it is and how comfortable the air suspension is and so on, it can actually keep up to that. So that's actually pretty well done. So really enjoying this driving part. Consumption here with the V6, you can drive it with some 9 liters on the more kilometers, 26 mpg US, 31 mpg UK. If you're going a little bit more uphill, maybe like a little bit higher speed on the motorway or more city share and so on, the MF system, at least in Europe, reduces this effect that it goes way up in the city traffic, however. But you know, when you have, let's say, worse conditions, it can also go like 10 liters or more kilometers. So that's more than 26 mpg US and 28 mpg UK. But there's like proximity that area. And about the pricing, we already have the German prices, for example. The price on other markets will come later. Start here at 58,000 euros for the Avant version, the sedan, and later to come, probably a little bit less expensive. And when you start then with the A6 V6, the 3-liter TFSI, 72,000 euros without extras, and then full spec vehicle. And one problem is the air suspension is like a separate option. But then if you go, let's say this Tech Pro package, or if you want to have the sports differential in the rear, or the rear access steering, they combine so many things that when you have one click in the configurator, it automatically forces you to go for the other thing. And then if you pick some options, suddenly you end up with 6, 7, 8, 9 options. And then you end up with the test vehicle as it stands here right now, full spec, 105,000 euros. It's a hefty price indeed, but if you look at the competitors, let's say I recently spec'd the BMW 5 Series with the 3-liter 6-cylinder. That's a plug-in hybrid there though, because it's the only combination you can get with the 6-cylinder in Europe. That was also like 100k list price, something like that. So it is in line with the competition, but in comparison to the past, I think they even raised the price a little bit. That's like my first impression, at least. Then we have to see what happens with tariffs and so on. Yeah, you see the worldwide tariff situation is getting more fierce and fierce. That's something complete different topic. But definitely, it's a very expensive vehicle, but the ride was also pretty cool. And I saw that there is still this gap between the A5 and the A6. Maybe not that much visually, and maybe not that much in the size, and that you only have like one hand more of knee room in the rear. But in the driving, especially if you go for rear access steering, air suspension, these are like the two main factors, plus the better noise dampening, then you still feel that it's like a segment above that. I would say if you go for a low spec A6, then you might think, hey, is maybe an A5 enough? And does it really justify the price difference and so on? But here, especially if you use all that features, you still feel then a difference. And so it's also still, or once again, very competitive with the main competitors like the BMW 5 Series or the Mercedes E-Class.